Good morning, Floss Tube. By the time you see this, it will be Friday night. So really, I should be saying good evening, Floss Tube. It is Friday, April the 5th, and I asked on Monday, Floss Tube, what you guys would like to see me work on today. And overwhelmingly, people voted for Sevan. And Gerald tells me it's probably because I made it seem like that's really the piece that I wanted to work on. So that's probably why you were very kind to me and said that. And I'll be honest, I have been dying to get back to this piece for a long time now because they're just so fun to stitch. So this is from the Landmark Tapestries and Designs Tapestry pillow collection. Let me show you the cover page here. And as usual, the cover photo really does nothing. Landmark Tapestries, and charts. Landmark Tapestries and charts. I believe there is a shop in California, an online place. Celtic something or other. If you just Google Landmark Tapestries and Charts, it should come up with it. And I believe they either sell them online or you can call up the shop and order them. I don't think they're kind of hard to track down, but I do know that people have found them. I know after I started this, Glenn, Southern Stitcher, she said she was glad that I was going to be working on it this week. She was enabled to buy this chart because of the blues that are in it. She loves blue. And these are just those beautiful $7.97 and what's the other one? $7.99. Those kind of really just beautiful royal blue and a Delft blue. So, clearly they don't speak as well in the chart, but when you see those colors start to come to life, these geometric designs are just so fun to stitch. And clearly, as I have finished 5 of these already, and the only 2 patterns that I didn't buy were the ones here on the end. They didn't speak to me quite as much as the other ones that I found a little bit more geometric. So I have stitched 5, and now I'm working on the other 5. The plan is that maybe one day each of my kids might like to have their own little collection. So we'll see if they choose. But you can bet donuts to dollars I'll be hanging them in my house until I shuffle off this mortal coil. So that's what I'm working on today. It is bright and early here in London, Ontario on a Friday morning. And I always forget to introduce myself. My name is Caroline. If you're new here, and welcome back to Friday Off the Grid Stitching. I hope you'll join us over on the Facebook group, Friday Off the Grid. Lots of fun stuff happening over there all weekend long with amazing stitching and just nice camaraderie. Nice place to hang out on the weekend. I have to be careful that I, sort of have a set amount of time in mind before I get onto the Facebook group, because otherwise I will spend my whole night, staring at photos and dreaming about new projects and things to come. But it's a lot of fun. So I'm recording this bright and early. I'm actually still in my pajamas. So funnily enough, tonight when we get together for our Friday night stitching, I'll probably be back in my pajamas for some cozy nighttime stitching tonight. John and Sarah were out the door bright and early this morning. They were up at 5:30 a.m. and out the door by 6 o'clock. John is taking Sarah to tour a university up in Kingston, Ontario. It is called Queen's University, and it's one of the universities that she applied to. The program that she's applied to there is quite competitive, so she won't hear about acceptance from that university until, I believe, the end of May. So, she's got some time to consider her options. So it's one choice of hers, and so John is taking her there for a tour today. Now, Kingston is it's a 5-hour drive here from London, Ontario, but they will most likely hit traffic in Toronto. Most people, if you've heard about Canada, you've probably heard about Toronto. It's one of our major cities, and rush hour traffic, as most major cities around the world, rush hour traffic can be rather crazy. So that will probably I'm guessing it'll add an hour to their trip. So it'll take about 6 hours for them to get there. And then they've got the tour. And then, my husband is so crazy. He really is. He said to her last week, he said, Montreal isn't that far away. Now, this is my husband, okay, who loves to drive. Montreal is another 3 hours from Kingston. It's not next door. But, to him, that's close by. He says, Montreal is only 3 hours away. We should drive up to Montreal after we have our university tour and go for Poutine in Montreal and, sleep overnight in a cheap hotel in Montreal and it'll be fun and, it'll be a laugh and then we can say we did it. And my daughter, who is always game for adventure, immediately said, yeah, we should do that. That sounds like a lot of fun. Plus she loves poutine. So that's what they're doing tonight. After they do their university tour, they're going to hop back in the car, tour around Kingston for a little bit, and then continue their way on to Montreal. And in fact, they have planned to visit John's cousin who lives in Montreal. His cousin, his wife, and their small daughter. And so that'll be quite nice for them tonight. But it's certainly not next door. So they will be heading home tomorrow. I don't expect them back until very, very late tomorrow night. Excuse me. But quite an adventure. Now, there are probably many of you out there scratching your head and saying, what the heck is poutine? Well, let me tell you, poutine is one of the most delightful, disgusting Quebecois, French-Canadian inventions ever to hit Canada. And if you're Canadian, you know what poutine is, and you either love it or you wonder what the heck we were thinking. So I'm on the it's delicious fence. However, I value my arteries. So it is a very, 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 very rare treat. So driving to Montreal for poutine, I'd say that's worth it. Poutine is kind of one of those funny things that you have to describe. And my scissors are caught in my DMC. There we go. That's better. Okay, now before I continue on telling you about the marvels of poutine, I am going to move my frame here so that I can carry on with this row of black triangles there. So, excuse me while I move this over a little bit. I know I'm going to not be quite as much in the screen. Let me angle the camera. There. So, no, that's not very good, is it? Let's see. I'll see if I can keep stitching over here. See what I can do. Maybe what I'll do instead is work on some black up here. That'll work. Yeah, that's what I'll do. Okay. Believe it or not, so I went online to find you a proper definition of poutine, and believe it or not, there was a 2012 article written in Maclean's magazine, which is one of Canada's national magazines, and I thought this was really quite funny. So that you get a good introduction to Canadian cuisine, such as it is. And trust me, this is not indicative of how we eat. So just so we put that out there. Okay, so poutine. To the uninitiated, it looks like nothing more than a steaming pile. Right away, I've got you right there, don't I? A steaming pile of fries, gravy, and half melted cheese curds. Okay, so that's like squeaky cheese, new cheese, not old aged cheese. Cheese curds are hard to describe, but they're delicious. So yeah, fries, gravy, and melted cheese curds. But in Canada, the signature dish of Quebec is a point of culinary pride and sometimes intrigue. More than half a century after it first appeared in rural Quebec, restaurants across the country are providing new spins on the iconic dish, throwing maple syrup, pulled pork, and even lobster into the mix. And I should let you know that the poutine place that we like in Montreal, they do this. They offer, you start off with your basic poutine dish, and then you add a whole bunch of other stuff on top. And it gets a little bit crazy in the end with this massive, huge, weighed down pile of poutine. So here are 7 facts about poutine you probably didn't know. Most of you didn't know poutine existed, so I'm guessing this is brand new for you too. It is widely accepted that poutine was invented in 1957 when a trucker asked Fernand Lachance to add cheese curds to his fries in Warwick, Quebec. Number 2, poutine is Quebec slang. Now, sometimes I say Quebec and sometimes I say Quebec. I don't know why. Well, people pronounce it differently. I believe I'm not from Quebec, but I believe they pronounce it Quebec, and people from Quebec are Quebecois. Poutine is a Quebec slang for a mess. Number 3, the average male would have to jog 2.5 hours to burn off the 1,422 calories contained in the country-style poutine. Bacon, chicken, gravy, fries, onions, and mushrooms, available nationwide through Smokes Poutineery. You believe that? There's a restaurant called Smokes Poutineery. In 1970s New York and New Jersey, poutine was served as a late-night side dish at clubs. They called it disco fries. Actually, I didn't know that. Did you? Disco fries. Disco fries sounds a little bit more appealing than poutine. In 2010, a poutine eating contest in Toronto, the winner, Pat Deep Dish Bertoletti of Chicago, ate 5.9 kilograms of poutine. I mean, that's just disgusting, isn't it? I can't even imagine that. Number 6, the largest poutine in the world was made in Saguenay, Quebec, and weighed 654 kilograms, about as much as a large horse. Why you'd want to do that? Probably just to get into the Guinness Book of World Records, perhaps, for the world's largest poutine. And number 7, considered the most expensive poutine in Montreal, the poutine au foie gras is available for $23 at Au Pied de Cochon. So, why you'd want a foie gras poutine? I don't know. Anyways, that was just a little bit of silliness to start off today. I thought it was kind of funny. A little bit of sideshow Canadian history and funniness. Anyway, I'm not liking the way this black is. But you know what? Actually, I don't think it's the black. I think I've got a knot. I can feel it in the blue. And it's not the blue, it's actually the black. There's a little knot here. So I'll have to maybe take care of that later. Okay, so apologies for those of you who could care less about poutine. I hope you're still with me and that you haven't given up. This is not typical of my, well, you know what? I guess it is kind of typical of my videos. I do tend to go off on a bit of a tangent. So anyway, things you didn't know about Canadian cuisine. So yeah, they're on their way. And you know, it's hard to believe that we are at this stage where Sarah's doing university tours, but anyway, there you go. So, getting into the comments and questions from last week, there was a really interesting discussion that happened in the comment field, started by a question that was asked about the way that linen stretches, and you know, does it stretch the same, warp versus weft? And there was a really interesting discussion. This started because I've got my my tiramisu here, and you know, since I've got it in front of me, I'll show you my progress that I made. Stitched on this a little bit this week. See this? So I'm finishing up this circle. I've come down here, and I've done about this much over here on this side. I've decided to concentrate on the left-hand side and work my way down and around. But the conversation started with this piece because this is a Picture This Plus even weave, and it's quite stretchy. You know, when I stretch out my scroll rods, it stretches quite a bit. And so I've been trying to be careful not to overstretch it because I don't want my stitches really distorted lengthwise. So this fabric does stretch a little bit widthwise, but her question was, does it stretch the same amount both ways? And I'd never really paid much attention to this with stitching fabric. But of course, you know, when I'm sewing, I'm always very well aware of which side is the stretchy side and which side isn't, because it really matters when you're sewing something. So anyways, I'm going to just show you this up here in case you've never seen this before. This is called the selvage edge, okay? And the orange line in this means that this fabric is a Zweigart fabric, okay? So Picture This Plus purchased their fabric from Zweigart, and then, you know, they did the specialty dyeing on it. So this is the selvage edge. And so this is going to come up later in the comments that I'm just gonna, I'm gonna read them to you, because then I'm gonna make sure that I've got the wording correct. And I think the information is first, oops, sorry, whoopsie, whoops, sorry. Hopefully I didn't make you all just jump in your chairs. I thought that the people who wrote in comments, I thought that their information was incredibly both informative and very, very interesting. So starting off with, let's see. Okay, so two comments that came in very close together and were quite similar. One from Jane of All Threads, and the other one from Nan Russell. So starting with Jane. Jane says, about the stretch question. Yes, linen and even weave stretch less in the warp direction along the selvage than in the weft direction. The reason for this is that during the weaving process, the warp threads are fairly tight. Okay, well that makes sense, doesn't it? Nan says, I've learned from making quilts that cotton fabric stretches a bit horizontally, weft threads, but is stable vertically, the warp threads. I believe the same holds true for linen. Okay, so I did understand that about cotton fabric, but of course it makes sense that linen would work the same way. So Jane, just to add on to that, Jane also is competing in Ginger Gerald's competition, and she hopes that that he goes slowly so she has enough time to finish her project. And Jane, I'm with you there. I hope Gerald takes his time, because trust me, tiramisu is certainly not going to stitch itself. And Nan, to finish her comment about the fabric stretching, she then left me a comment that she is also working on the ABC sampler houses that I'm working on, and she's trying to do one house a month. So thank you both for leaving me those comments. That was great. Next, we had a really great conversation happen between Aileen and Jill. So Aileen Daggett and Jill Bennett had a conversation in the comment section, and I just thought this was great information here. So I'm actually going to read their conversation to you. I hope that's okay. I did not ask their permission before doing this, but it's in my comment field, so I'm going to assume that it's fair game. Just gotta find my, what am I doing here? So yeah, you know, I really should be stitching these little guys at the same time. Okay, so we're gonna backtrack a little bit here. First of all, finish this one, and then I'm gonna sew my thread in and come back down here. Sometimes it's hard to see where the needle is going in through the black. There we go. If I'm traveling a distance with my thread, I will always try to tack it down in the back so that it's secure. Less chance for creating knots later on. And to do these stitches, well, actually, just to get up to the top there, I'll just jump. Anyways, you'll see what I mean in a minute. So Aileen starts off by saying, the warp or lengthwise threads are the strongest and will stretch the least. Crosswise threads are weaker and will give more than the lengthwise. Stitchers seem to be placing their designs without regard to the grain, as we do in sewing fabric. Look what I just did. See? Already made a mistake here. Can't read and stitch at the same time, I guess. Okay, so stitchers seem to be placing their designs without regard to the grain, as we do in sewing fabric. Lengthwise grain is the strongest and helps a garment retain its shape after construction. If you are stitching a pair or more designs, be sure to cut them the same direction, or it could mean that they will not match in size once framed. I think that's pretty interesting. And then Jill wrote in a response. I agree with Aileen. Needle pointers are advised to always have the selvage, the side with the orange thread on Zweigart canvas and fabric, on the side of the work. However, I have never seen similar advice for cross stitchers, and the various cuts of linen, such as fat sizes, are often chosen to fit with selvage on the top of the project. And you'll notice that when I'm stitching tiramisu, my selvage is at the top. And for sure, it is stretchier, you know, when I pull those stretcher bars, only going the one direction. So she continues on. I don't actually worry much about this, though I do think it would be better to have the selvage on the side when using a scroll frame, because the tension runs top to bottom. See? Right there. So if I'd been thinking before I started, because I have heard this before, but you know, I didn't really pay much attention to it, because frankly at the time I was more concerned about having shorter scroll rods because my fabric was much longer than what I needed. So I simply chose the shorter distance because it's a square design and used my shorter scroll rods. Excuse me. And then Aileen wrote back saying, it becomes a problem when matching sizes. I have seen over 1 inch difference in pieces that were cut in opposing directions. Changes in placement are frequently done to afford the purchaser a lower cost. Example, a bell pull cut crosswise instead of lengthwise. I can see a difference in the size of crosswise threads versus warp threads that may create a subtle difference in how the stitches appear. Well, that's, that makes sense. The size of crosswise threads, it would be interesting to stitch 2 samples on the same linen, one each direction, and see if we could detect anything. Some linens are woven with larger spaces between threads, and some with plumper weft threads. I would expect less difference with the latter. It is probably a matter of individual preference. It's just that we have so many series of designs that you may need to keep them the same size for identical finishing. And I think that right there sums it all up in a nutshell. If you are going to be stitching the series of designs, multiple designs that you want to hang together in a grouping, when you cut your fabric, you're going to want to make sure that your orientation or your cut of those pieces is the same for all of your fabric. Whether or not you're going to be starting them all at the same time or not. So if you're cutting all of your fabric, make sure that it's all cut exactly the same way, and that when you stitch it with the same orientation for every time you make your design placement, so that if it's going to stretch a little bit, they will all stretch exactly the same way, and then your finished pieces will be the same size. Isn't that interesting stuff? I think that's fascinating. And what a great conversation. Thank you so much. Okay, so here's where I'm going to start going one leg at a time for these little parts that jut out so that I can work my way back to the main tower of stitches and not have to jump stitches. So I'm stitching this 2 strands of DMC on a 16 count Aida. The coverage is lovely and full. Now it is black on an off-white Aida, so you can see a little bit of the fabric through the stitches. But when these are complete, you're not staring at them from 3 inches up. So, the overall effect is quite nice. Now, so I carried that over there. There we go. Okay. So let's see what else we had in the mailbag here. Anne Shaw. She wrote and had a question about white floss. She said, first of all, her first question is, what is your favorite overdyed floss? My favorite overdyed floss? I don't really have a favorite. I like them all. I don't think I've met a thread that I didn't really like. I probably prefer the DMC base versus the anchor base. So I tend to like the Classic Colorworks, Crescent Colors. What are they called? I say this every single time, and every single time I get it wrong. You all know what I mean. They use the DMC base to my knowledge. Look, and I forgot to do the little silly thing again. Oh, all right. You know what? I'm just going to carry that. Be a rebel. And anyway, the Weeks Dye Works use an anchor thread base, if I'm not mistaken. And I do find there's a difference between the two. So if I had to state a preference, I would say that I like the thread from the Classic Colorworks overdyed more so than Weeks. However, Weeks Dye Works colors, I love them. I mean, really, they have some colors that are just, you can't replicate them. So, there's pros and cons, but really, it's all good. I can't complain about anything. I still love stitching with all of it. Color and cotton too. I love her colors and her threads. They're beautiful. And Victorian Motto, I could go on and on. I haven't tried an overdyed that I didn't like. So I don't have a better answer than that, other than stitch all the things as fast as you can. I also love DMC. It's easily accessible, and such a wide variety of colors. These designs are all DMC. These Landmark, and thank heavens, because they're full coverage. And I can't even imagine. I mean, the cost would be prohibitive for me to try and do these with a specialty thread. So the DMC is lovely. And her next question was, what white floss would you recommend? I've been using B5200 frequently, but I dislike the coverage that white usually provides. Yeah, I think that's a really common thing to say. Most people find a little bit of difficulty with white thread. When you're stitching with white, I love B5200. But yeah, you need to maybe just take a little more care with the stitch. Try to railroad them. If it bothers you, you can railroad the stitch. So what railroading is, if you don't know what I'm talking about, and I know this is a black thread, so it's not going to be really easy to see, but it's when you separate, if you're stitching with two strands, you separate the two strands apart. And of course you do this a little more quickly than this, but you put your needle through those two strands and into the hole. So it's like you're, driving a little train through it. You're making train tracks, okay? Put your needle in, and then as you pull the thread through, it goes in the middle of your two strands, and then the top leg of your stitch will lie a little bit flatter. So railroading white thread can have an impact on how it looks. That can help. But yeah, I don't have a favorite white. I find that they all tend to react the same way. Just give you a little bit of trouble. As to why, I'm not sure. Maybe it has something to do with the dye process. I have no idea. And let's see. Oh yes, Jeanette Sizzle sent me a comment about Call the Midwife, saying that I should check my local PBS station because they show it once a week. And we don't have we don't have cable. We don't have regular television. We gave that up about, oh my goodness, I'm going to say that we gave up regular TV about 3 years ago, at least 3 years ago. And we have, we make do, we have lots to watch with Netflix and Hulu and Apple TV and all that good stuff. And lots of FlossTube on YouTube. So I don't have access to a PBS channel. However, I seem to be wrong about Call the Midwife. Netflix did not take it off. Netflix added 2 more seasons. So, saved by the Netflix bell, I have still been able to continue watching it. So, wonderful show. Enjoying it very, very much. And I've been able to slow down my consumption a little bit now that I'm not worried it's going away. So, thanks, Jeanette. But thank you for thinking about me anyways. And I have my weekly question from Kyle. I feel like Kyle should get his own section. Question from Kyle. And his question was a repeat of a question that I had last week from Teal, who asked about designing. Have you ever tried designing cross stitch? And I answered that last Wednesday. So it was like a Monday floss tube that I put up last Wednesday. So it wasn't the most recent Monday floss tube, it was last week's. And I did share a little design, a little gnome design that I had fun with designing. But no, designing is not something that I will ever consider doing professionally. I think that there are already so many wonderful designers out there, and I would rather stitch their work than my own. So, but thank you, Kyle. Thanks for the question anyways. Lastly, we have a question, and this is a good one. We have a question from Tracy Parker. So Tracy wants to know, when stitching with variegated threads and you have a large and long area to stitch, do you break it up into sections for the shading, or do you stitch a long line across to the next top row? That's a great question. And really, this has completely to do with personal preference. Some people like the stripy look that the variegated thread will give you when you just go back and forth, and others will do whatever they can to avoid it. So you have to decide what the look is that you're going for in the specific section that you're stitching, and then determine how you're going to, plan your route, as it were. You do have to cross each leg as you go with variegated floss in order to achieve the maximum amount of variegation. So just like I'm doing here, each X is completed as you go. So your question is good, but really the answer is, how do you want it to look? And then plan your route of stitching according to, where you want to see it go. I hope that made sense. Basically, there's no rules. You can't go wrong with a beautiful floss and a beautiful pattern. And lastly, I had a question from Kathy Janice. I had given a shout out to the Rocking Stitcher last week, and Kathy asked me, have you ever watched Country Stitcher's Floss Tube channel? I really enjoy them. It's Deb and Liz's channel. You bet your boots I watch Deb and Liz. I watch them every week whenever they put out a video. I watch them. I think they're just lovely ladies, and I always enjoy listening to them chat, and their friendship is a beautiful thing. So I watch them all the time. I watch a lot of Floss Tube. It is wonderful company while I'm sewing. Just, to be able to listen to craft chatter while you're working away it's really, really nice. I love it. I try to comment when I can, but most of the time, because I'm working and I just let the videos play through the playlist, however they come up, quite frequently I'll think I'll have left a comment, or I'll, say something in my head and not actually write a physical comment. So, but no, I definitely watch Country Stitchers, and I enjoy them a lot. So that is it for me today. It is now 10 to 9 in the morning, and I've got a little bit of work to do before I head out to record a Fiber Friends podcast this morning with my knitting friends here in town. And my son has a PD day, so he's home today, and my father-in-law is going to come over and hang out with him while I go and record that podcast. And then I'll come home after that, do a bit more work, and then at 6 o'clock it's time to stitch. And I will be working on this and tiramisu tonight. That's my plan. I'm going to a friend's house on Sunday for some stitching, and I plan on taking my Lizzie Kate on Sunday. So I'm hoping to touch all 3 projects this weekend a fair bit and see some nice progress. Oh my goodness, I just realized what I did. And you guys probably all noticed that I was doing this, and you've probably been yelling at me for the last half an hour, but I'm going to have to frog out everything that I just did. Do you see it? Of course you see it, because when you sit back and you look at it, you can tell that I should have 3 squares in between and not 2. I'm gonna have to rip that all out. Well, we're all human. I guess the frog came to visit me this morning. You must all have been wondering how long it was going to take me to notice, because I even frogged out that bit and I restitched it wrong and then continued to carry. So last week I cut out a slub with my scissors that I shouldn't have done, and this week I completely messed up everything that I stitched while I was sitting here chatting with you today. So you know what? I'm human, so I'm not going to re-record this video to save myself some embarrassment. I'm going to put it up out there for the world to see, and I guess I'm going to have to save this until tonight to frog it out and fix. But oh my goodness, I can't believe I did that. Anyway, it's neither here nor there. It's just stitching, and fortunately I love to stitch, so it just means I get to do a little bit more. Happy weekend, happy stitching, and I will see you on Monday for Monday Floss Tube.